Hello children, we have looked at the textual meaning of the poem Ode to the West Wind by P.B. Shelley. Now let us look at some of the analysis. Symbol, imagery, allegory in Ode to the West Wind. Symbol analysis. The west wind is the object of the speaker's plea in this poem. Means he's appealing to it, the powerful force that would deliver him from his inability to make himself heard or to communicate his ideas to others. Blowing from the west suggests an association with the revolutionary, liberating aspects of the young United States, or perhaps simply a favorable wind for ships returning home to ports in Europe. Associated with autumn, the west wind brings with it decay and the certainty of a wintry death, but it also makes a spring rebirth possible by clearing away the old dead leaves and planting seeds. Line 1. The west wind is the object of an apostrophe. Apostrophe means an address. जब हम किसी को मुखातिब होकर कुछ बात कहते हैं, डायरेक्टली जब हम किसी से बात करते हैं, at the beginning of the first line. This is the first time and by no means the last that the speaker will apostrophize the wind, means talk directly to the wind. In fact, you could say that this whole poem is one long apostrophe. You might also notice the excessive alliteration in this line. "Oh, wild west wind" is a bit over the top, means the W sound is being repeated. Lines 5 to 7. The west wind is personified here as the charioteer. Charioteer means बग्गी को चलाने वाला, घोड़ा गाड़ी को चलाने वाला, of the winged seeds that it carries to their dormant rest in the earth during the winter. Shelley will continue to personify the wind throughout the poem, although it never becomes a fully developed character. Line 14. The west wind is described as destroyer and preserver, which some scholars think is an allusion to the Hindu gods Shiva and Vishnu. Shiva is the destroyer and Vishnu is the preserver. Line 14 also introduces the refrain. Refrain means some line which is repeated at the end of every stanza in a song or a poem. The refrain of Ode to the West Wind, "Oh here," which appears at the end of the first 3 cantos. Lines 18 to 23. The west wind becomes part of a complex simile in these lines. The storm clouds spread across the blue surface of the wind are like a Maenad's lock of hair. We know this is a simile, it is a comparison and not a metaphor, because the word "like" appears at the beginning of line 20. The dead leaves. Dead leaves are referenced no less than 5 times in this short lyric poem. Dead leaves are the remnants of the previous season which the wind clears away. They are also a metaphorical representation of the pages of writing and poetry generated by the speaker, or perhaps even the author. Once ideas are put down on paper, they are printed on the leaves of a book. At that point, they seem to be declining. Lines 2 to 5. The dead leaves are part of a complicated simile. In these lines, dead leaves blown away by the wind are like ghosts running away from an enchanter. Line 16. Here we learn that the clouds are like Earth's decaying leaves. In the previous simile, the leaves were the main focus and the simile created an image that told us more about them. Here, the clouds are the main focus and the leaves are used as an image that tells us more about them. Line 64 to 66. The speaker compares his thoughts in a simile to withered leaves which is a pun on two meanings of leaves. Pun means something having a double meaning. Things that drop off trees, but also the pages of a book. Since the speaker himself is a poet who describes his plea to the west wind, his plea means his request to the west wind, as the incantation of this verse, line 65. The pun is even more obvious. However, because this is a very formal poem with heightened diction, we would prefer to call this a play on words instead of a pun. Funeral. Symbol analysis. Although there aren't any literal funerals in Ode to the West Wind, there is plenty of funeral imagery and symbolism. We have got dirges, meaning funeral songs, corpses, meaning dead bodies, the dying ear, the sepulchre, and ashes, just to name a few. Of course, they don't all come at once, means together. They are spread throughout the poem as part of different metaphors and trains of images. Taken all together, though, they make us feel like this poem is a kind of elegy or lament just as much as it is an ode. Lines 5 to 12. In an extended simile, Shelley compares seeds to corpses lying in their graves. Corpses means dead bodies. This is also an allusion to the Christian imagery of the apocalypse, in which the last trumpet is blown. Here the spring blows a clarion, which is a kind of trumpet, in order to resurrect the bodies of the dead. Here the corpses of the seeds, which will come to life in the spring. For more on this, lines 23-28. This extended metaphor compares the west wind to a dirge, the dying ear to the dead man in a funeral, and the night sky to the dome of a sepulchre. Sepulchre is in a way a graveyard, keh lo aap. Toward the end of the metaphor, Shelley's imagery breaks away from the strict correspondences of the metaphor, and both the wind and the inside of the sepulchre become stormy. It's almost as though when the storm breaks, when black rain and fire and hail will burst, the metaphor is broken down from inside. Line 65 to 67. The poem becomes a spell or incantation by which the poet hopes to make the west wind scatter his words, which are metaphorically described as ashes and sparks. Some of the words have the power to light new metaphorical fires under other poets and thinkers, while others are already dead. The Aeolian harp. The Aeolian harp was a common parlor instrument in the 19th century. Parlor means drawing room. Sort of like a wind chime, the Aeolian harp or the Aeolian lyre or wind harp was meant to be left in a windy spot, perhaps a window, so that the wind could play its own natural tunes on the instrument. बिल्कुल अपनी विंड चाइम की तरह. आई एम श्योर आपने एक विंड चाइम ज़रूर देखा होगा जो हम दरवाजे पे या खिड़की के पास लटका देते हैं और हवा के साथ उसकी हल्की हल्की धीमी धीमी धुन सुनाई देती है, टिंकल टिंकल आवाज़ आती है. For romantic poets like Shelley, Keats, Coleridge and Wordsworth, the Aeolian harp came to represent the way that the individual poet could turn himself into an instrument that expressed something more universal about the natural world. In Ode to the West Wind, Shelley's speaker begs the west wind to treat him as its lyre or trumpet or another instrument. Lines 57 to 58. The speaker apostrophizes the west wind, asking it to make him into a lyre. He actually wants to be turned into a passive instrument or object. Lines 59 to 61. describing the music that the west wind will draw from him as its instrument. The speaker characterizes its harmonies as in tumult, a powerful paradox. Bodies of water. Although Ode to the West Wind is mostly about, well, the wind, the middle of the poem moves away from the airy breezes and considers a different element, and that is water. This slippage starts to happen in Canto 2, where the wind is described as having a stream, line 15, and a blue surface, line 19, which makes it sound like a body of water. We are also reminded that the clouds being carried by the wind came originally into the water that evaporated from the ocean, and that they will rain back down into it. यही होता है, पानी भाप बनकर ऊपर उठता है, बादल बनकर वापस बरस के नीचे धरती पे आ जाता है. In the next canto, we learn how the wind wakes the Mediterranean Sea from his summer dreams, line at 29, and chops up the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. The water also washes away the wind for a moment there, but the poem reminds us that the west wind is always stronger than the calm, passive seas. Lines 15 to 17. These lines combine intense imagery of the natural world with a complex, extended metaphor. In the metaphor, decaying leaves falling from tangled boughs onto the earth. Boughs means branches. Tangled means उलझे हुए. And decaying means जो बेजान हो गए हैं, जो खराब होने लग गए हैं. Onto the earth are compared to the clouds that come from heavens and ocean. In other words, the combination of heaven, the sky with the sun in it, and ocean causes water to evaporate into the sky and form clouds. These clouds then float on the stream of the west wind, the way dead leaves float in a real stream. Here the water that has evaporated from the ocean rains back down. To emphasize the violence and power of the storm, Shelley uses 10 one-syllable words in this line, creating a strong, harsh sound as it is read aloud. Lines 29-30. The Mediterranean Sea is personified here as a dreaming man whom the wind can awaken from his summer dreams. Again, line 29. Lines 37 to 41. In 3 of these lines, the verb is placed at the end of the line. This creates an enjambment that drives the reader from one line to the next. This is rather like what is actually happening at this point in the poem. The Atlantic is splitting itself into chasms for the west wind. Analysis of form and meter. It is an ode written in terza rima and more. The most important form here is the ode. First, there is terza rima or third rhyme, an Italian rhyme scheme most famously used by Dante in the Divine Comedy. The idea with terza rima is that, ये ध्यान से सुने please, the lines are in groups of 3 and the middle rhyme of one set of 3 becomes the outside rhyme of the next set. This means the rhyme scheme is A, B, A. अब जो बीच की राइम है यानी कि B, वो नेक्स्ट 3 लाइनों की शुरुआत हो जाती है, B, C, B. फिर थर्ड वाले में C को लेके C, D, C and so on. Of course, it is hard to end this form because every set of 3 lines has a new middle that demands another set of 3 lines to use its rhyme. Shelley fixes this problem by following each set of 4 3-line stanzas with a couplet. यानी कि कैंटो में एक तरीके से हर स्टैंजा में 14 लाइन्स हैं. Shelley also divides the poem into cantos, which is the Italian poetry equivalent of chapters. In this poem, Shelley also plays with another form, that is the sonnet. Ode to the West Wind has 5 cantos, each of which is 14 lines and ends in a couplet. यानी कि each canto अपने आप में एक sonnet भी है. Ode to the West Wind is almost like a miniature sonnet sequence of 5 sonnets. The poem imagines one solution to an individual feeling weak in the face of the world, unity between man and nature, but the form creates another solution, unity between a prestigious Italian rhyme scheme and a famous English style of sonnet writing. इसको ध्यान से पढ़ें आप. Analysis of the speaker. The speaker in this poem is almost but not quite a fully fledged, completely developed, पूर्णतया विकसित character. We find an actual character who interacts with other characters in the poem. Not only does every poem have a speaker, but this speaker is addressing the west wind, calling it thou and invoking its aid. That must mean there is someone doing the invoking, someone talking to the thou and I am. We know that this speaker is concerned about sending his ideas out into the world for other people to experience. He knows or thinks that his ideas are not any good. In fact, he describes them as dead and withered, but he still wants to get them out there because they might provide an opportunity for other people to develop their own ideas. He feels incapable of doing this on his own because of something that has happened to him. It might be some specific traumatic thing, but it might just be the general pain of living. यानी कि केवल ज़िंदगी को जीना ही अपने आप में बहुत मुश्किल होता है, और हो सकता है पोइट उसी चीज़ से परेशान हो. ही ओनली रेफर्स टू इट एज द थॉर्न्स ऑफ लाइफ, लाइन 54. We also suspect the speaker might be a writer or even a poet because he likes to pun on the word leaves, which could be things that fall off trees but could also be pages of books. He also refers directly to the poem itself within the poem. By the incantation of this verse, scatter my words among mankind. ये lines 65 to 66 and 67 हैं. So it is not just Shelley writing a poem about the speaker himself knows about and is composing the poem. The setting. We are tempted to claim that the setting in this poem is the universe, and that would not be far wrong. While there are several geographical references here, like the Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean Sea, the Bays Bay, it is telling that all of them are two flowing bodies of water instead of urban centers, modern nations, or anything grounded. Shelley's poem, like the west wind that it describes, has the power to move freely over the world. Ascending means rising up to the zenith's height. Zenith means the highest point in the sky, line 22. Or plunging down means falling down into the sea blooms and the oozy winds, line 39, that are far below, line 38, at the bottom of the sea. More than anything else, Shelley sets this poem in the human mind. Even though the speaker claims that his thoughts are like withered leaves, line 64, we learn that he is tameless. टेमलेस यानी कि जिसको बांधा नहीं जा सकता, जिसको कंट्रोल नहीं किया जा सकता, एंड स्विफ्ट यानी कि फास्ट एंड प्राउड, लाइन 56, लाइक नेचर इटसेल्फ. इन फैक्ट बाय जक्स्टापोजिंग, उसका मीनिंग दे दिया है मैंने, टू पुट टू पीपल और थिंग्स क्लोज टुगेदर, यानी कि भिन्नता को दर्शाने के लिए दो चीज़ों को पास पास रखना. द वाइल्ड वेस्ट विंड ब्लोइंग ओवर द एंटायर अर्थ with the desire of the speaker to scatter his thoughts. Scatter yani ki bikherna. Shelley tries to fuse yani ki to join together the mind of man and the infinite range of nature. Analysis, that is the sound check. This poem is only slightly different from a prayer. You can almost imagine the speaker on his knees in front of the wind, begging it to help him. Such is the tone and sound of the west wind. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's song being. Line 1. The speaker implores, यानी कि वो beg कर रहे हैं, गिड़गिड़ा रहे हैं. But it is a grand, rolling, melodic sort of begging, which is why it reminds us of a prayer. Using the formal and old fashioned thou means you, and plenty of alliteration, the speaker proclaims his request with dignity. It is a wonderful contradiction. He is pleading, but proudly, to thou, O uncontrollable, line 46. He knows that his prayer is unlikely to have any effect, but he is going to make it sound as good as possible while he is speaking. Analysis, the title. The most important thing about the Ode to the West Wind is, of course, that it is an ode. An ode is a lyric poem, etc. पढ़ लीजिएगा. Odes are an ancient form of poetry that first appeared in classical Greek. They were extremely popular among the Romantic poets. Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats and Shelley all wrote odes that are still among the most famous poems in the English language. There are many different ways to classify the types of odes, which we won't get into here because they are not that useful unless you plan to study odes for the rest of your life. The point is that by titling the poem Ode to the West Wind, Shelley is signaling to us as readers that he is going to pull out all the stops. We know that we will need to look closely at the rhyme scheme, the rhythm, the stanza groupings, and all the little details of arrangement. We know that this is going to be a very serious poem, and we know that it is going to deal with some of the big issues in life, art and philosophy. Basically, calling the poem an ode is like putting black tie only on a wedding invitation. It means making it very formal. Things are going to be formal, perhaps even to the point of awkwardness. Another feature of odes is that they tend to have two major shifts in tone because they are often divided into three general sections. The sections are called the strophe, antistrophe and epode, but you probably don't need to remember all that. The first section establishes one point, the second section establishes a contrary point, and the end of the poem brings them both together. Not every ode fits this pattern perfectly, but it works perfectly well for Ode to the West Wind, which shifts from second person to first person at the beginning of Canto 4 and then moves on to consider the west wind and speaker together in Canto 5. By writing an ode to a force of nature, Shelley hints that he is going to be considering the power of the natural world. We might even guess that he is going to contrast what the natural world can do with what the poet can do. Why the west wind? Well, think about what is to the west of Europe in the 19th century. The answer is, of course, America, and what it might symbolize, that is revolution, freedom, new ideas, etc. Flights of philosophical fancy. You know you are reading Shelley when the color red is hectic, the earth is dreaming, the surges are airy, and the trumpets all play prophecies. Shelley belonged to a philosophical movement called Neoplatonism, which held that there was a perfect world of forms out there somewhere, and his resulting idealism, usually causes him to leave the earth entirely behind and soar up into the heavens with the angels of rain and lightning and spirits fierce. The most down-to-earth image in Ode to the West Wind is Bay's Bay, an obscure area near Naples where ancient Romans went on their vacations. Everything else literally happens in the sky, in heaven, or at the bottom of the ocean. Mythological references. Hindu gods Shiva and Vishnu, destroyer and preserver, line 14. The Maenads, line 21. Maenads were the female devotees of the wine god Dionysius, thus also called Bacchae and Bacchantes. If you remember, there was a reference to Bacchus again in the poem Alexander's Feast, which you studied in BA Part 1. Inspired by him to ecstatic frenzy, they accompany him in his wanderings and as his priestesses carry out his orgiastic rites. बच्चों, आपको बता दूं, जो वर्ड्स आपको डिफ़िकल्ट लगते हैं, आप उनको पढ़ते समय मीनिंग्स ढूंढें और खुद याद रखने की कोशिश करें. इन देयर वाइल्ड फ्रेंजी, यानी कि पागलपन, दे टेयर एनिमल्स अपार्ट एंड डिवार द रॉ फ्लैश. They are represented crowned with vine leaves, clothes in fawn skins, and carrying the thyrsus, and dancing with the wild abandonment of complete union with primeval nature. Geographical references. There is a reference to the Mediterranean Sea, line 30, Bay's Bay, line 32, Atlantic Ocean, line 37. Ode to the West Wind, the themes. Theme of man and the natural world. In Ode to the West Wind, nature is grander and more powerful than man can hope to be. The natural world is specially powerful because it contains elements like the west wind and the spring wind, which can travel invisibly across the globe, affecting every cloud, leaf and wave as they go. Man may be able to increase his status by allowing nature to channel itself through him. Theme of transformation. As the speaker of Ode to the West Wind feels himself waning and decaying, he begs the wind to use him as an instrument, inhabit him, distribute his ideas, or prophecy through his mouth. He hopes to transform himself by uniting his own spirit with the larger spirit of the west wind and of nature itself. Theme of mortality. The west wind in Shelley's ode is depicted as an autumnal wind, preparing the world for winter. As a result, the poem is filled with images of death and decay, reminders of both natural and human mortality. यानी कि हर चीज़ प्रकृति में जो चीज़ जीवित हुई है उसका अंत होगा ही. The speaker hopes that the death of one world will be inevitably followed by a new rebirth, पुनर्जन्म, and a new spring, नया बसंत आएगा. But the poem leaves this rebirth uncertain. और इसके साथ हम analysis and understanding of the poem Ode to the West Wind ख़त्म करते हैं. Thank you.